everybody, my name is Sesheta and today I am going to explain chapter 3 of class 7 geography, Our Changing Earth. So before starting, I would like to revise what is lithosphere. So lithosphere is one of the domains of the earth which consists of land, then soil, rocks and also the crust. Crust is the topmost layer of the earth on which we live. So now let's read. Lithosphere is broken down into a number of plates known as the lithospheric plates. So lithospheric plates, as you know that the crust, it is not just one whole complete layer. It is broken down into small, big and irregular shapes and sizes. So these portions, these pieces are known as the lithospheric plates. So you will be surprised to know that these plates move around very slowly, just a few millimeters each year. This is because of the movement of molten magma inside the earth. The molten magma inside the earth moves in a circular manner. So just below the crust comes the mantle. So mantle consists of the liquid lava, the magma. So this magma, as it is liquid, it is continuously flowing. So because of this, these lithospheric plates, they are also moving continuously. The movement of these plates causes changes on the surface of the earth. The earth movements are divided on the basis of the forces which causes them. So there are two types of forces. The forces which act in the interior of the earth are called as endogenic, and the forces that work on the surface of the earth are called as exogenic forces. Endo means inside or the interior and exo means outside, the exterior. Genic means origin. So by the name you can understand endogenic forces which are happening on the crust on which we live, and I said the opposite. Endogenic means what is happening inside and exogenic means what is happening above the crust on which we live. So endogenic forces sometimes produce sudden movements and at the other times produce slow movements. Sudden movements like earthquakes and volcanoes cause mass destruction over the surface of the earth. So now let us talk about what are volcanoes. Volcano is a vent or the opening in the earth's crust through which molten material erupts suddenly. So a volcano, it has a magma chamber which stores the magma, the lava, and there is a vent through which the lava, it comes out with a lot of force, and above there on the top there is a crater, the opening. So from the crater the lava comes out along with gases and dust and other materials. So similarly, when the lithospheric plates move, the surface of the earth vibrates. The vibrations can travel all around the earth. These vibrations are called earthquakes. The place in the crust where the movement starts is called the focus. So this focus is inside the crust, below where we live. So what are earthquakes? Actually, when these lithospheric plates, they are moving, sometimes when they collide with each other or they move upon or slide below each other, this causes earthquakes. So that place is known as the focus, and the focus is below the crust. The place on the surface above the focus is called the epicenter. So on the surface where we are living, like if this is where we are living and this is the crust, so this is the focus and this is the epicenter. So vibrations travel outwards from the epicenter as waves. These waves and the sea waves are different. These waves are known as seismic waves. The greatest damage is usually closest to the epicenter, and the strength of the earthquake decreases away from the center. So as far as we are from the epicenter, the more safe we are and the less damage is done. So there are actually three types of waves: P waves, S waves and L waves. So P waves are longitudinal waves, S waves are the transverse waves, and L waves are the surface waves. Let's read forward now. Although earthquakes cannot be predicted, the impact can certainly be minimized if we are prepared beforehand. So there are a lot of earthquake preparedness, many precautions that we can take, like keeping a first aid box handy, then making sure that you can take cover under a wooden table or a hard desk, and it is advised that you should not hide under glass tables because they might break. Then you should stay away from fireplaces, chimneys, and also from windows, photo frames or mirrors that could break due to vibrations. Now let us talk about the machine which measures the earthquakes. So this machine is known as a seismograph. So the seismograph, it measures the earthquake on the basis of a Richter scale. So an earthquake of 2.0 or less Richter scale can be considered as a minor earthquake. You may or you may not feel it. And an earthquake over 5.0 can cause damage by making things fall. A 6.0 or a higher magnitude is considered very strong, and 7.0 is classified as a major earthquake. Many times after a 7.0 or a 6.0 earthquake, a tsunami also follows if there is an ocean nearby the place, nearby the lithospheric plates. So that was all about earthquakes and volcanoes. Now let us talk about major landforms. The landscape is continuously worn away by two processes, weathering and erosion. Weathering is the breaking up of rocks on the Earth's surface. As you know, there are different types of rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks, and igneous rocks. When these rocks break on the surface of the Earth, this process is known as weathering. Now the second one, erosion, is the wearing away of the landscape by different agents like wind, water and ice. For example, you must know about landslides. Landslide is when the soil is shifted away by an eroding agent like water, or many times because of cutting down of trees. The eroded material is carried away or transported by water, wind, etc. and eventually deposited. This process of erosion and deposition creates different landforms on the surface of Earth. Let's take the early example of landslide. So when the land is sliding, it is getting shifted from one place, it is being transported to another, and then it gets deposited. So this deposition is happening because of water. So now let's talk about working of a river. The running water at the river erodes the landscape because water is an eroding agent. When the river tumbles at a steep angle or over very hard rocks or down a steep valley, it forms a waterfall. So in a waterfall, the topmost layer of the rock, it is known as the hard rock, and above and below it comes the soft rock or the undercut because of the power of the fast flow of the river. As you know that when it comes down in a waterfall, the force of the water, it becomes very high and the current becomes very fast. So here in the did you know box, you can read that there are different and thousands of waterfalls in the world, and the highest waterfall is the Angel Falls of Venezuela, which is in South America. And other falls are Niagara Falls, which is very famous. It is located on the border of Canada and USA. And the Victoria Falls also, it is on the borders of Zambia and Zimbabwe in Africa. So as the river enters the plain, it twists and turns, forming large bends known as meanders. You must have seen that a river does not move in a straight line. It keeps on turning and twisting. So those turns are known as the meanders, like those curves which come, they are called meanders, and a lot of alluvial deposits are found there. As water, it is continuously eroding and taking along a lot of sediments with it. So those sediments get deposited on the meanders. Due to the continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of the meander, The ends of the meander loop come closer and closer. In due course of time, the meander loop cuts off from the river and forms a cut-off lake called an oxbow lake. So oxbow lake was, you can say that it was earlier a part of a river, but now it has been broken and made another lake. That lake can also be, it is quite similar like a pond, but it is called an oxbow lake because after a very long period of time, maybe decades or maybe centuries, these meanders, they come closer and closer, and as they come closer and closer, eventually they gets connected, and after another long period of time, they start to move away from each other, making a different portion of water which is getting accumulated. That portion of water, that place is known as an oxbow lake. At times, the river overflows its banks. This leads to the flooding of neighboring areas. As it floods, it deposits layers of fine soil and other materials called sediments along its banks. This leads to the formation of a flat, fertile floodplain. So this whole area where the river is, that is known as a floodplain, and when flooding happens, a lot of sediments are deposited there, and this makes the land fertile and good for agriculture. The raised banks are called levees. As the river approaches the sea, the speed of the flowing water decreases and the river begins to break up into a number of streams called distributaries. Distributaries and tributaries are the same, and because here when the main river comes, there are different tributaries forming before it gets mixed with this ocean, mixed with the sea. So those thin rivers or thin lakes, they are called as distributaries. The river becomes low so that it becomes to deposit its load. Each distributary forms its own mouth. The collection of sediments from all the mouth forms a delta. Now that was the working of a river. So now comes the working of sea waves. The erosion and deposition of sea waves gives rise to coastal landforms. Sea waves continuously strike at the rocks. Cracks develop. Over time they become larger and wider. Thus hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. So as you know, that the sea waves, they continuously keep on hitting the rocks. So because of that, cracks are developing, and this makes the rock much weaker, and due to this it breaks down and forms a hollow-like structure known as a sea cave. As these cavities become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remain, thus forming sea arches. Sea arches are, and the sea caves, the only difference between both of them is that sea caves are closed from one side, but sea arches, you can go through them easily. Further, erosion breaks the roof and only walls are left. These wall-like features are called stacks. Stacks is when there is just one whole boulder left, one straight line of boulder. There's no arc being formed, or there's no cave being formed. The steep rocky coast rising almost vertically above the seawater is called the sea cliff. The sea waves deposit sediments along the shores, forming beaches. Now comes the working of wind. An active agent of erosion and deposition in deserts is the wind. In deserts, you can see rocks in the shape of a mushroom, commonly called mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock more than the upper part. Because of this, as you know that a mushroom, it is thin from below and it is very big from above. So similarly, as the wind in the desert, it consists of sand and it becomes heavier. So because of that, the wind, it only erodes the lower section of the rock, and from above it is very huge. Therefore, such rocks have narrower base and wider top. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. Similarly, like water transported sediments from one place to another, the wind transports sand in desert. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited in low hill-like structures, and these are called sand dunes. When the grains of sand are very fine and light, the wind carries it over very long distances. When the sand is deposited in large areas, it is called loess. Large deposits of loess is found in China. So the difference between of a sand dune and a loess is that sand dunes are small hill-like structures in which the sand is continuously getting deposited. That is in the desert, and loess can be very far away and no hill-like structures are formed. It is just a lot of sand which is getting accumulated and on a vast area. So that was all about volcanoes, earthquakes, and the working of wind and water. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to know about more topics of social science, please like my video, subscribe my channel, and don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much. Bye.